Linda had nothing left, just an old truck, a loyal German shepherd named Ranger, and the scrapyard she called home. One rainy morning, she bought a forgotten storage unit with her last $42. Inside, buried beneath the dust and silence, she found a single rusty key, a key that would unlock a secret hidden for 40 years. Before we begin her journey, please take a second to hit the subscribe button and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Chapter 1. The Old Door. The morning air was sharp, tinted with the smell of rust and wet asphalt after last night's rain. Over the horizon, the junkyard shimmered faintly beneath a gray sky, a landscape of forgotten metal and fractured memories. Linda Brooks trudged through the maze of broken washing machines and twisted bicycles, her boots crunching on glass, her breath misting in the cold. She was 52, short and sturdy, her shoulders broad from years of factory work. Her dark brown hair, streaked with gray, was tied back beneath a frayed wool cap. Her hands, rough and calloused, bore the map of a life that hadn't been kind, but hadn't broken her either. There was something steady about her, like an oak tree that had weathered too many storms but still stood, stubborn and rooted. Beside her walked Ranger, a large German shepherd with a deep russet coat and amber eyes alert to every sound. He was 6 years old, muscular, scarred from old fights perhaps, but his gait carried a quiet grace. The dog never strayed far. His loyalty had the gravity of something sacred. To Linda, he wasn't just a companion. He was the last heartbeat that kept her tethered to hope. Her home was a battered Ford pickup, parked at the edge of the junkyard. The passenger seat was Ranger's, covered in a threadbare blanket. Inside, coffee cans filled with coins rattled when she moved, and an old photo of her younger self, smiling in front of a factory gate, was taped to the dashboard. She used to build things, fix things, matter, but the factory had closed 5 years ago. Automation, they said. Since then, she had drifted between temp jobs and scrapyard hauls, trading metal for just enough cash to feed them both. That morning, as she rummaged through a pile of aluminum frames, a piece of paper caught on her boot. It was damp, half-torn, stamped with fading red ink. Storage auction, abandoned units for sale. The address was from a facility on the outskirts of town, scheduled for that very afternoon. She brushed the dirt off, staring at the bold letters. "Looks like fate's sending invitations again," she murmured. Ranger tilted his head, ears twitching. Linda had $42.18 left in the world, enough for gas, one meal, and maybe a single night parked legally. Her stomach twisted at the thought. The sensible thing would be to sell the scrap, buy food, and keep surviving. But there was something about the flyer, something magnetic, irrational, that pulled at her chest. By noon, she was standing in front of Maple Storage and Hauling, a low, peeling building surrounded by rusted fences. A small crowd had gathered, mostly men in work boots and baseball caps, their laughter cutting through the air. The auctioneer, a thick-set man with a red beard and a stained windbreaker, stood on a crate, calling numbers into the wind. "Next up, Unit 117, start and bid, $40. Linda hesitated at the edge. She didn't belong here, not with her threadbare coat and grease-stained jeans. But Ranger nudged her leg gently, as if to say, "You've faced worse." The crowd wasn't paying attention. One man, a tall, bald fellow with a tattooed neck, snorted. "No one's paying 40 for junk." The auctioneer frowned. "Fine then, 30. Silence. Linda's voice came out cracked, hesitant. 32. Heads turned. The men stared. Some smirked. "You sure, lady?" the auctioneer asked. She nodded, gripping her backpack strap tighter. "I'm sure. 32 going once, going twice, sold." He slammed the gavel down. A ripple of chuckles moved through the crowd. "She just bought herself a pile of rats," one man muttered. Linda ignored them. She handed over the wrinkled bills, every dollar of her day's luck. The auctioneer scribbled a receipt. "Unit's yours, ma'am. Keys on the door." The corridor smelled of dust and oil. Ranger padded quietly beside her, nails tapping on the concrete. The number 117 was scrawled in faded paint. She turned the lock and pulled. The metal door shrieked open. The first breath inside was damp and cold, heavy with the scent of mold. Light seeped through a cracked vent, falling on old boxes, a broken lamp, and what looked like the skeleton of a sofa. Dust motes swirled in the beam like tiny ghosts. Linda stepped cautiously. Ranger sniffed around, tail low. "Well, buddy," she whispered, "either we hit gold or I just spent our dinner on cobwebs. A corner of the room caught her eye, something different from the rest of the clutter. Half buried beneath a collapsed shelf sat a wooden trunk, the kind you'd see in old war movies, its surface dark with age and water stains. Iron hinges sealed the edges, and carved along the lid were faint initials, too worn to read. Her heart gave a curious little thump. The lock was thick, rusted, but not unbreakable. She crouched, running her fingers along the grain of the wood. The touch sent a chill up her arm. Not fear exactly, but something ancient, electric, as if the air itself remembered. "What you found there?" Linda jumped. It was Tom Dillard, one of the regular bidders she'd seen earlier. Tom was in his late 40s, lean but wiry, with a mess of blonde-gray hair and a 5-day beard that looked permanent. His blue eyes had that half-daring, half-weary glint of a man who'd seen too many disappointments. Once he'd been a truck driver, until an accident left him limping and bitter. "Just some old box," Linda said quickly. Tom peered inside, smirking. "If it ain't a body, it's probably worthless. These units are all junk." "Maybe," she replied, voice steady. "But junk's just something people stopped looking at." He raised an eyebrow, almost impressed, then laughed. "Suit yourself." He left, whistling. Linda waited until his footsteps faded before turning back to the trunk. Ranger whined softly, pawing the floor beside it. "Yeah, I know, boy. It feels weird, doesn't it?" She looked around the dim unit. Everything else, the furniture, the books, the boxes, seemed irrelevant, like props left behind for a forgotten scene. But the trunk, it called to her. She reached for a crowbar leaning nearby, wedging it beneath the lock. The metal groaned. She pressed harder. The hinge gave a sharp crack, then silence. Linda froze. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then the lid creaked open by itself, slow as breathing. A faint gust of air escaped, carrying the scent of something sweet and decayed, like old paper and rain. Inside, under a layer of dust, something gleamed, a flash of brass, a corner of parchment, maybe even a small brass key tied to a ribbon. Ranger growled low, hackles rising. Linda stared down, her pulse drumming in her ears. "Easy, boy," she whispered. "It's just a box." But as she leaned closer, the lights overhead flickered, and somewhere deep within the unit, something clattered, like a chain being dragged across the floor. Ranger barked sharply, stepping in front of her. The air turned colder. Linda swallowed hard, her eyes fixed on the open trunk. Inside, beneath the papers, a faint sound echoed, steady, rhythmic, like something breathing. Chapter 2. Echoes of the Past. The air inside the storage unit hung thick and unmoving, as though it had been holding its breath for years. Linda stood frozen, her flashlight trembling in her grip, the beam quivering over the open trunk. For a moment, she thought she'd imagined the sound, that soft, steady rhythm beneath the clutter. But Ranger's low growl told her it was real. She knelt cautiously, brushing away a layer of dust until the faint noise stopped, replaced only by her own heartbeat. Beneath an old quilt and some yellowed newspapers lay a bundle of envelopes tied with a faded blue ribbon, their corners eaten by time. Next to them rested a stack of photographs and what looked like blueprints rolled tight and sealed with wax. Linda's calloused fingers hesitated before untying the ribbon. The first envelope bore a looping, elegant handwriting, property of Evelyn Hartman. The name stirred something deep in her memory. She had heard it before, decades ago, back when she was still fixing machines in the old Ridgeway plant. Evelyn Hartman had been a local legend once, founder of Hartman Appliances, a woman whose face had graced business magazines, known for building her company from scratch during an era that chewed women up and spat them out. Then, one winter, she disappeared after accusations of fraud and corporate theft. The tabloids had called her a thief, a liar, a ghost. No one ever proved a thing, and no one ever saw her again. Linda unfolded one of the letters, careful not to tear the fragile paper. The ink had bled from years of moisture, but the words were still legible. If you are reading this, it means they have buried the truth. The factory was never mine to lose. It was taken. Find the designs, and you'll find the proof. Linda read it twice, her breath catching. The words felt personal, raw, almost desperate. She could imagine Evelyn's hand trembling as she wrote it. Ranger nosed closer, sniffing the edge of the trunk, his ears pricked. Then he barked suddenly, turning toward the far corner of the unit where the shadows deepened into black. Linda's flashlight caught the glint of something metallic half buried under a stack of books. She crouched and pulled free a small box, metal, dented, but still locked tight. Its surface was engraved with a number, 21. The key from the trunk ribbon fit perfectly into the latch, but she didn't turn it yet. Instead, she sat back on her heels, heart thudding. "Who keeps secrets this long, boy?" she murmured. Ranger gave a soft whine, his tail sweeping the dusty floor. A noise echoed outside, the rattle of a closing door. Linda stiffened, holding her breath. When she stepped into the hallway, a figure was passing between the units. A woman in a dark coat, tall, slender, with silver hair pinned neatly at the back of her head. Her movements were graceful, deliberate, but her face was pale and sharp-edged, like porcelain. She glanced at Linda, then quickly looked away. "Excuse me," Linda called. "You here for the auction too?" The woman paused. "No," she replied softly, voice calm but distant. "I was visiting an old friend's storage." Her eyes lingered briefly on Linda's unit before she turned and disappeared down the corridor. Linda watched her go, uneasy. Something about her poise, too elegant, too controlled, didn't fit with the rusted chaos of Maple storage. She shook it off and turned back inside, locking the door behind her. The blueprints unrolled with a sigh, revealing precise drawings of gears, wiring, and product molds. Schematics for a kind of compact appliance Linda had never seen before. Each page was marked E. Hartman, Confidential, 1987. Her mechanic's eyes recognized genius in every line. Whoever Evelyn Hartman was, she had been ahead of her time. Linda's pulse quickened as she found a smaller diagram labeled Production Facility, Hartman Industries, East Ridge. "East Ridge," she whispered. The plant she used to work at stood on that very site before it was torn down. The memory struck her with sudden clarity. Her supervisor, old Joe Kendrick, had once mentioned that the plant design wasn't their own. "Bought out years ago," he'd said. "Whole thing built off some woman's plans." Linda shivered. Maybe that woman had been Evelyn. As night fell, she and Ranger retreated to their truck. The rain began again, steady, rhythmic. She spread the documents across her dashboard, her reflection trembling in the windshield. If this proves she was framed, maybe... She stopped. What? Maybe it changes the past? Maybe it doesn't, but she couldn't ignore it. She reached for the metal box and turned the key. The lock clicked open. Inside were several cassette tapes, brittle but intact, and a folded photograph of two women standing in front of a factory. One was unmistakably Evelyn, tall, proud, with short dark curls and a smile that reached her eyes. The other woman, slightly younger, wore a mechanic's jumpsuit and a bandaged wrist. On the back, written in the same looping hand, "To my friend Linda B." Linda's stomach dropped. The air left her lungs in a rush. Linda B, that couldn't be. She was only a child when Evelyn vanished. Unless her mother had worked there. She fumbled through her memories, fragments surfacing. Her mother's warnings about powerful people the night she came home shaken, whispering about a woman named Evelyn who tried to make things right. Ranger barked softly, bringing her back. Linda pressed a hand to her forehead. This can't be coincidence. Outside, thunder cracked. She looked again at the photo. The woman beside Evelyn, strong jaw, gentle eyes, was the spitting image of her mother, Dorothy Brooks, who had died 15 years ago. Linda's hands trembled. "Mom, what were you part of?" Lightning flashed, illuminating a car parked across the street. A black sedan, engine idling, headlights off. Someone was watching. Ranger growled, low and steady. Linda quickly gathered the papers, shoving them back into her backpack. She started the truck, hands slick with sweat. The sedan's headlights flicked on, following as she pulled away. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She drove aimlessly through side streets until the car finally turned off and disappeared. Only then did she exhale, shaking. In the quiet that followed, Ranger rested his head on her lap. "I know, boy," she whispered. "We're in something bigger than we understand." She looked down at the photograph one last time. On the bottom edge, faint but legible under the light, were the words Evelyn had written in small cursive. "If they find me, tell her to look where the machines sleep." Linda frowned. Where the machines sleep? Her eyes lifted toward the dark horizon, where the silhouette of the old Ridgeway factory loomed against the storm clouds. Ranger barked once, as if he understood. And for the first time in years, Linda felt that peculiar spark again. Not fear, but purpose. Yet beneath that flicker of courage, one question gnawed at her. If Evelyn had left all this behind for her, then who, exactly, was the woman in the dark coat watching from the storage yard? Chapter 3. The Men in the Shadows. The next morning broke gray and windless, a colorless dawn that seemed to drain warmth from the earth. Linda parked her truck outside the old Riverside Public Library, its cracked steps slick with dew. The building was a century old, its red bricks veined with ivy and its tall windows fogged with history. She tightened her worn denim jacket and glanced at Ranger, who sat alert in the passenger seat, head high, eyes scanning the street. "Stay close, partner," she murmured, giving his ear a reassuring rub. His tail thumped once against the seat, steady, loyal, ready. Inside, the library smelled of paper and rain. The overhead lights flickered faintly, casting long shadows between the rows of shelves. Linda approached the reference desk where an elderly librarian looked up from her computer. Her name tag read, Mrs. Clara Whitmore. She was in her early 70s, tall and angular, with silver hair pulled into a perfect bun and glasses that slid down a narrow nose. Her pale eyes were sharp, observant, but not unkind. "Can I help you, dear?" she asked in a voice like fine sandpaper. "I'm looking for information on Evelyn Hartman," Linda said softly. "Old business records, news articles, anything archived." Mrs. Whitmore's brows lifted. "Hartman? Now there's a name I haven't heard in years." She typed briskly, the clack of keys echoing through the quiet. "Tragic business, that one. Brilliant woman, but they buried her fast. You'll want microfilm records, downstairs in the archives. Ask for Jonah." The basement was dim and cool. Rows of file cabinets stood like tombstones. Behind the counter sat Jonah Pierce, a man in his mid-30s, lean and freckled, with unruly auburn hair and the kind of smile that looked practiced but tired. He wore a plaid shirt rolled to the elbows, revealing a small tattoo of an anchor on his wrist. He'd been a history teacher once, until budget cuts closed his school. Now he cataloged ghosts of the past. "Evelyn Hartman?" he repeated when Linda asked. "Yeah, I've seen her name in the old Gazette reels. Give me a sec." He rolled over to a dusty cabinet, humming tunelessly as he flipped through drawers. She ran Hartman Industries back in the 80s. Story goes, her partner sold her out, accused her of cooking the books. Disappeared before trial. Folks said suicide, but no body ever found. Linda leaned against the counter, heart tightening. Who was the partner? Jonah squinted at the label. "Thomas Gable, real estate mogul later on, died rich, real snake from what I've read." Thomas Gable. The name tasted like iron. She had seen it before, scrawled on the blueprint margins, stamped on Evelyn's company seal. A man who built his empire on stolen ground. Jonah wheeled the microfilm reader closer. "You can browse these. Page 23, issue from December 1987. Big scandal coverage, hours." Passed as Linda scrolled through headlines and half-truths. Evelyn's name repeated in bold type. Fraud allegations, Rock Hartman Industries. Company collapse sparks inquiry. Partner claims betrayal. Every article felt colder than the last, draining the humanity from the woman she'd seen smiling in those old photos. Then she found a brief column buried deep inside. Whistleblower missing after attempt to contact reporter. The name wasn't given, but Linda's gut clenched anyway. Dorothy Brooks, her mother. The screen blurred. She blinked hard, swallowing the ache rising in her chest. Ranger, resting at her feet, nudged her knee softly as if sensing her pain. "You're right, boy," she whispered. "Some truths don't stay buried." When she finally stepped outside, the sky had turned a bruised purple. Streetlights buzzed faintly. She pulled her collar up against the wind and crossed the lot toward her truck. That's when she felt it, the prickle on the back of her neck. Someone was watching. Two men leaned against a dark sedan parked a few spaces down. One was heavy-set with a trimmed goatee and a long black coat that strained against his shoulders. The other was younger, clean-cut, with slicked blonde hair and a faint scar along his jaw. Both wore the same kind of expression, detached, assessing, like hunters deciding when to strike. Linda's pace quickened. Ranger tensed, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. "Evening, ma'am," the heavy-set man called. His voice was smooth, almost polite. "That your dog?" She didn't stop. "Yeah." "Good-looking animal," he said, taking a step closer. "Mind if we ask you a few questions? You were at Maple Storage yesterday, right?" Her breath hitched. "Who's asking?" He smiled without warmth. "Just folks interested in property recovery. You might have taken something that doesn't belong to you." Ranger barked sharply, the sound cutting through the night. Linda reached the truck door, fumbling for the handle. "Back off!" The blond man moved faster than she expected, reaching for her arm. Ranger lunged, teeth flashing. The man yelled, stumbling as the dog clamped onto his sleeve. Linda swung the door open, grabbing a wrench from the seat. She struck the heavy-set man's shoulder, sending him reeling. "Ranger, come!" she shouted. The shepherd released and jumped into the truck. She slammed the door, started the engine, and tore out of the lot. Behind her, the sedan's headlights flared to life, following. The chase didn't last long. Linda knew these streets. Narrow alleys, industrial lanes that twisted between abandoned warehouses. She took a sharp turn and killed the headlights, coasting into darkness. The sedan sped past. Silence returned, thick and trembling. When she finally stopped beneath an old overpass, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ranger whined, licking her arm. That's when she saw the blood. A shallow cut ran across his flank, a streak of red against his golden fur. "Oh no, sweetheart," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. She tore her sleeve, pressing it gently against the wound. "You saved my life again." Ranger wagged his tail weakly, his eyes bright with trust. Linda exhaled shakily, cradling his head in her lap. "They know, Ranger. They know we have the truth." Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the bridge. Rain began to fall, slow and steady. In the dim light, she noticed the corner of an envelope sticking from her jacket, one she didn't remember taking from the storage unit. She pulled it out, heart pounding. On its front, written in that same elegant hand, "For whoever carries her name." She unfolded it, reading by the light of the dashboard. "If you found this, they'll come for you too. But remember, the shadows can't touch what's already in the light." Linda's reflection stared back at her from the windshield, eyes fierce beneath the streaks of rain. "Then I'll drag it into the light," she whispered. Outside, the dark sedan idled at the far end of the street again, headlights off, waiting. Ranger lifted his head, growling low. The night held its breath. Chapter 4. The Secret Beneath the Factory. The old Ridgeway Industrial District lay silent under a waning moon. Once the heartbeat of the city's working class, it was now a graveyard of corroded steel and broken dreams. Wind howled through shattered windows, and the air reeked faintly of oil, rust, and rain-soaked concrete. Linda parked her truck at the edge of the abandoned Hartman Industries factory, its faded logo still visible on the crumbling brick facade. Ranger leapt out first, his paws splashing through shallow puddles. His wound from the previous night had scabbed, but he limped slightly, a reminder of loyalty paid in blood. Linda knelt, checking the bandage. "We'll take it slow, buddy," she whispered, brushing his fur. His ears flicked forward, alert and ready. She glanced at the key in her hand. Small, brass, engraved with the number 21. The same number etched onto the metal box, the same number that haunted her dreams since she opened that trunk. Something waited here. Not money, not treasure, but truth. And truth, she'd learned, could burn just as fiercely as fire. The front gate hung off one hinge. She pushed it open and entered the main hall. Her flashlight beam danced across long dead assembly lines, conveyor belts thick with dust, and machines that looked like sleeping giants. Every creak of the metal rafters echoed through the emptiness. "This is where they built everything," she murmured, "where it all began." As she explored, her light caught on graffiti sprayed across a far wall. "Property of Gable Corp. Trespassers will be prosecuted." The name hit like a blow. Thomas Gable had taken Evelyn's company, and perhaps her life. His reach extended even into this ruin. Ranger sniffed the ground, his nose twitching near a metal grate half hidden by debris. He pawed at it, whining softly. Linda knelt and cleared the rubble. Beneath was a staircase leading down into darkness. "Good boy," she said, heart quickening. She descended slowly, each step groaning beneath her weight. The air grew colder, thick with the smell of mold and old water. At the bottom, her flashlight revealed a vast sublevel, rows of storage crates, broken desks, and one heavy steel door bearing a corroded plate, "Authorized personnel only." She tried the handle, locked. Then she noticed the keyhole. The number 21 gleamed faintly in the beam. She hesitated, then slid the brass key inside. The mechanism clicked once, then twice. The door opened with a hiss of stale air. Inside was a small office, its walls lined with filing cabinets and shelves covered in soot. In the center sat a massive safe, its combination dial worn smooth by time. Carved faintly above the handle, E. Hartman, 1987. Her hands shook as she tried the key. It fit perfectly. The lock released with a groan, and when she pulled, the door swung open to reveal folders, binders, and a single sealed envelope. She grabbed the topmost file, flipping it open. Blueprints, contracts, and letters poured out, evidence of patent theft, forged signatures, and the transfer of ownership from Hartman Industries to Gable Corp. Linda's breath caught. This was it, the proof Evelyn had died protecting. They stole everything, she whispered. Every idea, every dream. Behind her, Ranger's low growl shattered the stillness. Linda froze. From somewhere above, footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, descending the same stairs she had taken. Her stomach knotted. She turned off her flashlight, plunging the room into darkness. The sound grew clearer. 2 voices, male, one sharp, one deep. You sure she's here? Car's still outside. She knows too much. Linda recognized the tone. The same men from the library parking lot. Her pulse thundered. She grabbed what she could, 3 folders, the sealed envelope, and a small metal drive marked H1987. She stuffed them into her bag and motioned for Ranger to stay quiet. The door creaked open. A narrow beam of light swept across the room. Well, well, the heavy-set man said, stepping inside. His face came into view, creased forehead, stubbled jaw, eyes like cold marble. Told you she couldn't resist playing detective. The blonde one chuckled. Let's make it quick. Linda ducked behind a rusted cabinet, holding her breath. Her fingers brushed a nearby valve pipe. The faint hiss of pressure vibrated through the metal. An idea sparked. As the men moved closer, she twisted the valve sharply. Steam exploded outward, filling the room with dense fog. Ranger barked once, launching from the shadows. The blond man yelled as the dog collided with him, sending his flashlight skittering across the floor. The heavy-set man fired a gun, one deafening shot that ricocheted off a pipe. Sparks rained down. Linda seized her chance. Sun was sprinting toward the exit. "Ranger, come!" she shouted. The shepherd followed, blood glinting faintly on his fur. They dashed through the hall as fire alarms began to wail. The bullet had struck a gas line. The hiss grew louder, then roared. She burst through the stairwell door, coughing as smoke rolled upward. The air shimmered with heat. Flames licked the walls. Ranger barked frantically, urging her toward a side corridor. They stumbled into a narrow maintenance tunnel, metal, dripping water, cramped and suffocating. "Keep going," she gasped, pushing forward. Behind them, an explosion ripped through the factory. The blast wave slammed Linda into the tunnel wall. Her vision blurred. She felt the world tilt, sound folding into silence. The last thing she saw was Ranger's face, soot-streaked, desperate, before everything went black. When she opened her eyes again, light stabbed through her eyelids. Voices surrounded her, urgent, muffled. She felt something soft beneath her, smelled antiseptic. A woman's voice said gently, "She's waking up." Linda blinked. The world came into focus. A paramedic crouched. Beside her, mid-30s, dark skin, steady eyes full of warmth. Her name tag read Nora Grant. She was tall and athletic, her short curls damp with rain, her uniform stained with ash. "Easy," Nora said, placing a hand on Linda's shoulder. "You're safe now. You were pulled out just before the building collapsed. Lucky your dog found us." Linda turned her head weakly. Ranger lay nearby, muzzle resting on his paws, eyes half closed but alive. Relief flooded her chest. He saved me," she whispered. Nora smiled faintly. "Looks like he does that a lot." Linda tried to sit up, clutching the bag still strapped to her chest. "The files," she murmured. "They can't be lost." "They're right here," Nora said, holding up a sealed plastic pouch. "We kept them with you. Whatever this is, it survived the fire." Linda's vision blurred with tears. She reached out, gripping Nora's hand. "Thank you." But as the sirens wailed and the fire devoured the last of the factory, she couldn't shake the feeling that the flames hadn't just consumed a building. They'd awakened something far more dangerous. And somewhere, beyond the barricades, a figure stood watching in the rain. The same silver-haired woman from the storage lot, face hidden beneath an umbrella, expression unreadable. When the paramedics turned, she was already gone. Chapter 5. The Light After the Storm. The world came back to Linda in fragments. A soft beeping sound, the sterile scent of disinfectant, the dull ache pulsing in her ribs. When she opened her eyes, the ceiling was a clean, endless white. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, breaking into slanted bars across her blanket. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, she felt warm. Ranger was the first thing she saw. He lay curled on a blanket near her bed, his bandaged side rising and falling in calm rhythm. Someone had cleaned his fur. The reddish streaks of dried blood were gone, replaced by the faint smell of antiseptic and soap. When he heard her stir, his ears perked, and he lifted his head, tail wagging weakly. "Hey, partner," she whispered. Her voice cracked like old wood, but the joy beneath it was pure. "We made it." A voice came from the doorway. "Barely, but yes, you both did." Linda turned. Nora Grant, the paramedic who had pulled her from the fire, stood holding a clipboard. Today she wasn't in her rescue uniform, but a soft gray sweater and dark jeans. Without the exhaustion of the night before, she looked younger, maybe mid-30s, with warm brown skin and steady eyes that carried the quiet authority of someone used to saving lives. Her smile was small but genuine. "You scared us back there. Gas explosions aren't supposed to have happy endings." Linda smiled faintly. "Guess I didn't read the manual." Nora chuckled, moving closer. "You were lucky. The debris missed your spine by inches. Your dog found you first, actually. Dragged a medic's glove right to us. Smart boy." She leaned down, scratching Ranger's neck. "He wouldn't leave your side, even when we loaded you onto the stretcher." "Yeah," Linda murmured, voice trembling with affection. "He's stubborn that way." Nora's expression softened. "Someone's been waiting to see you." She gestured toward the hallway. A few moments later, a woman entered. Tall, poised, perhaps in her late 20s. She wore a navy coat over a cream blouse, her chestnut hair pulled into a neat bun. Her presence filled the room, not with power, but with quiet grace. "Ms. Brooks," she said gently, "I'm Clara Hartman." The name hit Linda like a bell ringing in her chest. "Hartman?" "Yes," Clara smiled sadly. "Evelyn was my great-aunt. I oversee what's left of her company now, or rather, what's finally being rebuilt." She stepped closer, holding a small folder. "The authorities recovered everything from the fire. The files you found, the recordings, the contracts. They prove that Thomas Gable orchestrated the fraud. Your discovery cleared Evelyn's name and exposed the cover-up that's lasted nearly 40 years." Linda's eyes stung. She turned away, swallowing hard. She didn't deserve what they did to her. "No," Clara agreed quietly. "But because of you, people will remember her for what she truly was. A builder, a visionary, not a thief." Clara opened the folder, showing a photo of Evelyn smiling beside an older woman in a mechanic's jumpsuit. Linda's breath caught. Her mother again. "Dorothy Brooks," Clara said softly. "Your mother helped Evelyn design the prototype for the energy-efficient motor that changed the market. It was your family's work, too. Evelyn mentioned her often in her personal notes, said she was the only person she trusted when everything fell apart." Linda's throat tightened. "She never told me," she whispered. "Sometimes," Clara said gently, "people hide their pain so their children can live lighter." Silence filled the room, not empty, but full of something unspoken and sacred. Then Clara straightened. "I want to offer you something, Ms. Brooks. A chance to start again, properly this time. I've restored Hartman Industries under a new name, Hartman and Brooks Manufacturing. We'd like you to join us, head of maintenance, if you'll accept. Your experience, your integrity, we need that." Linda blinked in disbelief. "You're offering me a job?" Clara smiled. "And a home. There's an apartment above our new workshop. Nothing fancy, but it's yours if you want it." Linda looked askance at Ranger, whose eyes gleamed like polished amber. "What do you think, boy?" she murmured. Ranger's tail thumped twice. A clear answer. Weeks later, the air smelled different, cleaner, freer. Linda stood on the balcony of her small apartment overlooking the river. The city glimmered under the soft gold of sunset. Below, the new Hartman and Brooks facility stood alive with light and laughter, a place reborn from ashes. She wore her new uniform, navy overalls with her name stitched neatly over the pocket. Her hands, once used to scraping rust from junk, now repaired machines built to last, the kind Evelyn once dreamed of. Ranger sat beside her, healthy again, his fur gleaming under the dusk light. He'd become the unofficial mascot of the workshop. Workers brought him treats, and he made his daily rounds as if supervising the entire operation. Linda scratched behind his ears. "You know," she said softly, "I think she'd be proud, Evelyn. And Mom, too. A voice startled her from behind. It was Nora, dressed in casual clothes, holding 2 coffee cups. "I figured you'd still be up here," she said, handing one over. "You're hard to find when you're working." Linda smiled. Old habits. They stood side by side, watching the sun dip below the skyline. "You ever think," Nora mused, "that some storms come just to wash the truth clean again?" Linda took a long sip, eyes on the horizon. "Yeah," she said quietly. "And when they pass, what's left isn't broken anymore, just clearer." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air hummed with the sound of distant traffic and the quiet heartbeat of machines below. Then Ranger barked softly, leaning against Linda's leg. She laughed, kneeling to hug him. "You carried me through hell, partner. Guess we both finally found our way home." The wind shifted, warm and gentle. In the sky, the last light lingered, soft gold melting into twilight. Somewhere in that glow, Linda imagined she saw Evelyn and her mother, standing together in the reflection of the factory windows, smiling. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel haunted. She felt whole. Sometimes, God doesn't send miracles wrapped in light or thunder. Sometimes, He sends them quietly, in the shape of a tired woman and her loyal dog. Linda didn't find gold, or fame, or fortune. She found something far greater, grace. Because when the world turns its back, God still whispers, "I am here, and I still believe in you." Every sunrise, every kind act, every breath of hope. That's His way of reminding us that broken things can be made whole again. So, if you're watching this, remember, your story isn't over. Maybe the next miracle is already walking beside you, just like Ranger walked beside Linda. May God bless you and your loved ones. If this story touched your heart, share it, so someone else can find their faith again. Leave a comment below about your own miracle, and don't forget to subscribe, because every story we tell here is a prayer for hope, and together we keep that light alive.